Hello, student CEOs everywhere. This is Jim Sporer with another set of tips and tricks that I hope are useful for your projects. Let me go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. And I'll upload these presentations so you have the link to them as well and put them in the Slack so you'll have access to this. So this is part two, advice to student CEOs about the weekly sprint. And this presentation will be input for my JimTwin. So hopefully it can give better student answers in the future. See part one recording here if you haven't seen that already. In part one, we talked about the weekly sprints and how, maybe there's like 10 weeks for the student CEOs to work together. And I think the good news is all the student CEOs I'm currently working with have learned how to use their multiple AI digital workers incredibly well. And I'm getting so much results from your digital workers that it's taken me a little while before I can get my V17 together, my version 17 of my document, which is getting huge, of course, because there's so many good things that you're finding. Um, but each student CEO should figure out how to, within 1 hour, use use multiple AI digital workers, digital tools, ChatGPT, Claude, Google, Gemini, with the same tasks, so you can see and compare and learn how to manage your digital workers. But then, and this is kind of the most important part in the AI era, is you have to get together with your fellow students to share what you each did on your task and select the best out of those. Learn how to be um, humble. If you see somebody else has got a better answer, and we can talk about what is a better answer in a minute, but you know, acknowledge that and understand why it's better, because that's how you're going to learn. Just like in science, a better explanation, there's reasons why it's a better explanation. You have to, as you're all learning how to use AI digital workers, you have to learn which digital worker gave the best answer, but you also have to be able to, again, with humility, look at what the other students are doing and say, hey, I like what you did best. And here's the reasons why, that this is going to help the client the most. And then you can share that with me in our 30 minutes. And again, I'm kind of overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that you're creating with your digital workers. So I'm hoping this part two video will help you work with your fellow students to narrow down the set of good stuff you have for the client, so that when you share that with me in the 30 minutes, it's something that I can absorb and incorporate into my V17 document, which I'm working on currently. So I hope that makes sense. One, two, three weekly sprints, your digital workers, 1 hour with your fellow students for 1 hour, distilling the best, and then 30 minutes with me where I get the benefit of what you've done. Now, in part one, I talked about three questions that student CEOs should be asking themselves, and I realized I learned I left out the fourth and most important. I was just assuming it was there. Question one is about your digital workers. Question two, you don't have to worry about this time. I'm building up my digital twin, but eventually all of you students will have a digital twin, I imagine, that you have to assign a job to. And then what do you assign yourself, keeping up, following things with accelerating change. But question four is, what jobs can you and others work on together? And I capitalize together because that's that 1 hour a week where you're together, working together to accelerate the learning benefits for your client, right? So the best thing is the thing that's best for your client, but you got to get together and talk about what's best for the client. So let's dig into that just a little bit. If we go to the next slide, here is your client, and I'm retired, so this doesn't apply to me so much anymore. But when I was in industry, it did. If your client is an industry executive, time is money. How much money? Well, about $300 per hour at least. And most of them are thinking to get their executive salary and bonuses, they actually have to bring in 20 times that amount from their customers. So we're talking about like 6,000 per hour pay for their executive value. For some companies, it's much higher already today. But that's how much money where, the typical executive will be thinking about. So your client, if they're an executive, industry executive mentoring you, is thinking, my time is so valuable. If this isn't, helping me bring in $6,000 per hour to my company, what am I doing? So revenue per employee expectations are exponentially increasing in the AI era because they're expecting their employees are going to be using AI to even do more. So, so what else matters though? Because executives don't just think about this. That's probably like 80% of their brain. But 20% is thinking about talent and acquisitions. And let's go into that a little bit because this is where you all come in, the student CEOs. So many executives also have a talent scouting and recruiting goal. So they're being evaluated. Are you scouting out new talent and are you recruiting them to our business? And sometimes this is looking at top talent in their competitor companies. Oftentimes they just think who's the best person in the industry and I want them working in my company. However, sometimes this is mentoring early career employees. Very often, there's some junior employees that need mentoring, but it's also looking out for university talent. The other thing on the executive mind is increasingly a major source of revenue and talent is acquiring startup companies for their customers and employee. I think I mentioned this time I was in a meeting in San Francisco with some of you, and I was in a room with like 50 people and our IBM CEO, soon to be CEO, Ginny Rometty, and we were brainstorming something. We were like the distinguished engineers and top people in a particular area, and she wanted to get us all together to brainstorm. And I was sitting right beside the CEO, but she fortunately or unfortunately started the questions going in the other direction. So it was going to come around to me and I was going to be last. So all the good answers were starting to be taken by everybody else, of course. So when it came my turn, I was trying to think, what can I say that would be interesting to everybody? So I said, let's start with a question to you all. How many of you interviewed for a job here at IBM? And me and the CEO raised our hand. Nobody else did. We were the only two people in that room of 40 who actually interviewed for a job at IBM. Everybody else had come in through acquisitions. Um, so acquisitions are increasingly, and you do the acquisition because you want the customer revenue and you want the employee talent. So as you're thinking about a student CEO, you should also be thinking this may be the future of talent acquisition for companies. I hope that makes sense. Now, the main thing that I didn't cover a lot in number one, I talked a lot about the white paper and the weekly sprints, but I didn't talk about the business model canvas. So this part two really is focused on business model canvas. That's the designed artifact. Those are startups. Hopefully now you know why startups are so important to industry mentors. But in part one, the progress section of the white paper should be startup ideas in the business model canvas format that address the client challenge. Whatever the client challenge is, show me the business model canvas um, startup ideas. Now, there will be existing startups that are already out there solving this problem. And I didn't make this challenge too focused on researching all of the startups that are out there, but I could have, and maybe I should have. But I was much more interested in getting you student CEOs thinking about new startup ideas. Um, and listening to these new startup ideas is a great conversation to have with the industry mentors and student CEOs, especially if the startups are things you could actually do as a student, things that don't require hundreds of millions of dollars in top talent. So that's why I thought it would be interesting to focus on the new ideas. Others. Why is it important for the student CEOs to balance working separately on tasks? That's the old divide and conquer, and I think that's going to be less and less and less. But together on a task, laser focused on some challenge together, and you're all comparing your results. It's simple. It's accelerated learning rate for communicating with each other on important topics to the client and searching. And again, I'll put that with humility for the best possible answer. Because sometimes you're like, oh, that's my idea, so it's the most important. No, if you can see rationally that this is a better result, you should be willing to let go of your idea. Well, no, maybe you'll fight for it a little bit, but But the point is, you really have to start learning how to evaluate things that are important to your client, not just things that you have an ego investment in. I know that's hard. So why the laser focus on the same task matters. Imagine if, your assignment each week was to go out and learn strategies in different board games, and each of you divide and conquered. So one of you was looking at chess, one of you was looking at checkers, one of you is looking at backgammon, one of you is looking at Chinese checkers, one of you maybe is looking at poker. And then you get together for an hour to discuss what you've learned. You're going to be all over the map. But if all of you are learning chess or all of you are learning poker, then you're going to have a much narrower, more focused conversation, more laser focused. And that's what you're after, is you're after accelerating your learning about what's important to the client. So imagine each student CEO is learning a different board game and trying to share their learnings about strategy with other students. Uh-uh. Focus on the same task. Now, sometimes, of course, you do want to work divide and conquer because that's a good thing to do as well. If you're exploring a big space, you can divide and conquer. But you all should be thinking about what's important to the client. That's the most important thing. So fighting AI slop, tip one is give good examples. And I'm going to show you some stuff I did with the chat GPT on this in a minute. But sometimes you give your digital worker a task and what you get back is word salad. You look it over and it's just like, this is pretty much what I was asking for, just the words are rearranged and there's no new stuff here. It's highly general. It's blah. And I'll give you an example of when I asked for a business model canvas. I got a real blah one. But what I did then is I gave ChatGPT a good example, a quantitative example, one that I had made up a while back um, about washable tattoo vending machines, but it's very quantitative. So I asked it to take my description of that um, startup and turn that into a quantitative business model canvas. And then you'll see when I asked for uh, additional quantitative business model canvases, I got things with lots of quantitative numbers here. In fact, there's other things I did that made it even better, but you can discover some of these things as well. So fighting AI slop number two, because you're going to get, a lot of word salad back from these digital workers. And it's just like, you got to be able to look at it and go, you know what, this is just a whole bunch of words rearranged and there's no value here for my client. But if you, as different CEOs, in addition to the prompt that you're putting in, you can also ask your digital worker to make it specific for and relevant to you as the audience. And you have to describe yourself. What are your career aspirations? And you can ask the digital worker, okay, here's who I am, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm studying, here's my career aspirations. Now give me a practical startup that I could actually run in my spare time that's quantitative. That's going to be much, much more focused again. So those are two, and then you might get something like this because I gave it some stuff about, these are real students, so make it something practical they could do. And they came up with this mentor match AI micro advisory marketplace idea that I will put into my V17 eventually. All right, so that's all I've got. The rest of this deck is part one. So let's get out of this presentation. And now let's go to ChatGPT. And let's just take a look at some of these prompts and what I did. Because there's actually one other trick I want to show you, which is, as V17 is getting bigger and bigger, it's over 100 pages, that's probably too much to upload to certain digital workers, and you want to re-summarize, recompress it. So I'll show you how I get that happening. So here is, I uploaded V16, right? And then I said, please create a realistic student startup that a team of students could run from their dorm that would take only 4 to 5 hours a week for each student and would help increase the quantity and quality of industry mentors willing to invest 30 minutes a week to mentor student teams working on real world challenges. Please keep it simple and fail safe, meaning that even if the revenue is small and things do not work out, there is some mutual benefit to the student teams and the industry mentors. I am after simple, practical, realistic startup ideas that can be turned into visual business model canvas and HTML output format. The uploaded file provides, that's V16, provides broader context for this ISSIP goal with the ISSIP AICollab program, which encourages starting small with students interviewing executives before finding mutually interesting real-world problems to work on. Before starting, is the task clear? Any questions for me? Yes, the task is clear, and then it recaps everything I said, and then it gives me this mentor bridge light startup idea. And if you look at this one right here, it describes it a little bit. A little bit of quantitative here about how much time is there, but not much other than that. And it's then it gave me the business model canvas for that. Let me show you what that looked like. Okay, so this that HTML, when you look at it, uh, let's get through all this. Okay, was this. Okay. So it's got the 9 boxes of the business model canvas. It's got the title. It's got a little tagline, but you see it's just words, and it isn't very deep at all. So then what I did is I went to the Chat GPT and I said, okay, thanks, but please turn it into a quantitative business model. And here's an example of a startup, this washable tattoo idea that, how to make $1 billion in about 20 years with washable tattoos. So it's very quantitative and it says, great, I'll do that. And then it gave me the HTML for that. Now, if we look at the HTML of that one, you can see, okay, it's got the short description, it's got the cost, and for each of the 9 boxes, it's very quantitative. And I looked through it and it looks pretty good. Looked like it did a great job of like turning that little description I did into something good. So now that I had this, I could say, okay, let's go back to that original task that I gave you. Now let's give me some quantitative examples that are really practical. And for this one, it generated a pretty nice. Oh, and the other thing I meant to say here is I asked it here. Okay, that was just what I needed. Now let's brainstorm again on the student team working for their dorm room just 5 hours a week for a team of 5 students who want to build a fail-safe business, increase the quantity and quality of industry mentors and student teams as part of their AICollab program. Please create a prompt. So now I'm asking it to create a prompt that I can use to generate multiple realistic business model canvas diagrams with quantitative aspects in each box of the canvas in HTML format. Can you create such a prompt, perhaps including a summary of V16 as well? So this is how you get around the document being too big, is you say, okay, now create a prompt, but include a summary of that V16 document. Before starting, is the task clear? Any questions from me? So it understood it pretty well, and then it generated this really nice prompt that actually summarized my V16 document pretty well. And it also had aspects of how to create a realistic quantitative business model. So this was a pretty good prompt. Now I could cut and paste this into all my digital workers. I haven't done that yet. I probably should do that for V17, but I just wanted to show you the result that I got um, from that one. And this was a mentor match AI micro advisory marketplace. And again, it actually seems to me like this is one. It's got a unicorn pathway scenario, which is kind of interesting. It's a realistic thing that students could do, a student team could do in about 25 hours a week, and there is a pathway for this to become $1 billion startup. And it had some fail-safe characteristics. So I thought this was thumbs up. Um, this is an interesting business model canvas. So I'll get all of this into the presentations, into your Slack. I'll get the recording on ISSIP YouTube into the Slack, and I'll get all of these different business model canvases I just showed you into the Slack. It's going to take me a while to get V17 done because I've got tons of stuff to put in it. It'll probably be 200 pages by the time I'm done, which is getting huge. But that's partly because all of you student CEOs are starting to really catch on how to do this with your AI digital workers and floating up the best ideas. So I'm pretty excited about what the final white paper and the final designed artifacts, these startup ideas are going to be. I think this is really going to help ISIP a lot. So thanks for your help. Bye for now.